Welcome to the Breakaway Entrepreneur Podcast, where master business coach Janet Fish and her special guests explore the characteristics and traits that lead entrepreneurs to success. Get ready for real conversations of what it takes to overcome real challenges and break away from your competition. Here's your host, Janet Fish.
Thanks, Ben. People First, Then Profit is not just the name of a podcast. It's a philosophy. Devoted husband and father, relationship marketing expert, Don Mamone shares his thoughts on finding opportunity through challenge, achieving success through the service of others. Don and his wife Emily separated themselves from an overcrowded photography industry to redefine what business they were in, resulting in a wildly successful, thriving business. That's until March 2020, when the world changed. Find out what they are doing to create opportunity when it seems like none exists. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I did creating it. Enjoy our chat. Good morning, Breakaway Entrepreneurs. This is Janet Fish with the Breakaway Entrepreneur Podcast. I am super excited to have Don Mamone with me today. Let me tell you a little bit about Don. Don's decade-long career in hospitality culminated with his role as the director of events for the renowned Beverly Hilton. His time in this fast-paced, high-profile career instilled in him the importance of customer service and relationship marketing. Determined to pursue a lifelong passion, Don and his wife Emily opened their photography studio 14 years ago, guided by and based largely on the same principles, creating an award-winning studio photographing from Dallas to destinations around the world. The Mamones are confident their success is due in no small part to their people first, then profit philosophy. I love that. And I see that right behind you, which is so cool. We'll talk about that too.
Cool.
As a relationship marketer, speaker, and educator, Don is dedicated to helping business owners and entrepreneurs crush their goals faster with less work. And I love that too. Welcome, Don. How are you doing today?
I'm spectacular. Thank you for asking, Janet. How are you?
I am great, and you are spectacular, and I love that about you. So I've given my listeners a little bit of background on you. What would you add to that?
That I'm a devoted husband and father above all things.
I know that too.
Yes, you do.
Two daughters, I believe.
One daughter and currently two nephews staying here because we're helping them with their distance learning. So one that's ours, two that we're borrowing for the time being.
I got it. And is this because of the coronavirus?
Yeah, so the pandemic was a bit more compacted in the space where they live on the southern coast of Texas. And since we have a little bit of flexibility in our schedule, it was easy for us to support them for the distance learning. So they came up here right before school started, and they'll probably stay here through at least Thanksgiving.
Awesome. Okay, well, We're going to dive deeply into how you have pivoted and some of the things that you've done in relation to our new reality of COVID pandemic world. But before we go there, this podcast primarily talks about entrepreneurship. So tell us a little bit about your journey to being an entrepreneur.
Well, thank you again for having me here, Janet. My foray into entrepreneurship started 14 years ago. I was a hospitality-driven servant in the hospitality world. And I did that right out of college because that's just what you do. You go to college, you get an education, and then you get a job. And I didn't hate it. I really actually liked it quite a bit. I was young. I liked the energy. And I was part of the team that provided the service to the group sales department. So they would sell these huge pieces of business, these multi-day events and conferences, and we would service them. We would generate menus. We would set up their rooms and make sure that they were basically happy. And I bring that up for a very good reason, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But basically what happened was I loved it right up until the point where I didn't. I moved to Los Angeles and very shortly realized that it wasn't the right place for me, despite the fact that it was a very prestigious property. And I was very honored to be selected to be a part of that property at a young age. It just didn't align with my core beliefs and values and the way I wanted to operate my life. And so I took a job in Dallas for the same company, but at the corporate office. Everything was great about that right up until it wasn't. And the project that I was on was canceled. And they said, you can go back to hotels. We'll find you another hotel, or we're going to have to let you go. We're going to basically have to separate employment. And I had been doing photography for quite a while. It was a passion of mine in high school and college. Just didn't see it as a job for whatever reason, Janet. And I picked it back up because I had more free time working the corporate job. And I couldn't imagine going back to hotels. And so my beautiful and talented wife, Emily, who we referenced earlier, said, we should just do this. We should just make a go of this. She was a photographer as well, as sort of a side hustle and a hobby. And that was in 2009. And we never looked back.
So was it the fact that you didn't want to go back to work at a corporation, or was it your passion for photography? Like, what was the decision-making criteria that said, I'm not going to go back and do that anymore. I'm going to go this direction?
I don't think there's any one reason for any one decision, especially one that's that big. I would say it was primarily the fact that I was happiest and loved photography and serving a client with that talent that I had and that passion that I had sort of reawakened. But it was also the idea, to a certain degree, hospitality professionals, and let's just talk about it right now. They are the in first, out last, working hard every day, and it necessitates being at a hotel. You're an operator in that hotel, and so this idea of going back into a hotel space for 60 plus hours a week, where I had to fundamentally be there and in service to a client, it was a little less attractive than, hey, let's go ahead and put 80 hours a week in if we have to, but we do it when we're the most productive for our clients and in order to further our passion and our fulfillment, than as opposed to going back. So I wouldn't say that it's because I didn't want to go back to work for a corporation. It's just, I think the lifestyle didn't appeal to me any longer.
So I hear freedom, which is a lot that we talk about that a lot. It's a really important thing for me. That's one of the, although I might not have identified that when I quit my job and moved to becoming an entrepreneur, that's been the driving force of what keeps me here as an entrepreneur is the freedom to do what you want to do with who you want to do it with. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about those beginning years, because I know how hard it is to start a business. I know how many hours you put in. Talk about that. Talk about that journey, because I don't want to talk about, it is a struggle, and I'm sure it was, but talk about that whole journey, how you faced those struggles, those challenges, how you got through them, who helped you, what was going through your head that kept you going day after day after day as you're trying to get clients and grow that business.
So here's the deal. It was super hard at going through it, right? And at the time, it's really hard to find those moments where you've sort of figured it out. But the interesting part about it is, as our business grew and evolved and we started to look back, there were very crystallized moments where we could say that's what made the difference between either remaining flat, giving up, or hopefully reaching the success that we had the fortunate opportunity to achieve. And I remember it was a very hard time because we did this in 2009, coming out of the Great Recession and a downturn in the economy. Saturation of the marketplace for what we did was at its height, right? One of the things that we found was, as the economy suffers, those industries where people have a passion. So for photography, it's one of the most popular hobbies in the world, behind, I think, only gardening, incidentally, and sort of interestingly. Those people who may have been laid off think, oh, I want to be a photographer too. And so I think that there was a resurgence and a escalation of people in that industry. And so I went to an event with Emily. It was a networking event because I'm a relationship marketer at heart. And I thought, I'm going to go out and meet all these event professionals and we're going to exchange information, and we can, rising tide. I think a third or more of them were photographers. And I had this immediate gut check. Oh no, how are we possibly going to find success in a marketplace that has a downturned economy, which means probably less clients or very strict budgets, and a saturated offering from a million other photographers? And it was at that moment that Emily and I started a strategy behind, we no longer wanted to be seen as photographers. We were creatives, we were artists, we happened to be photographers, but we wanted to elevate ourselves to a place where the people that we met and connected with through relationship marketing would tell their clients, sure, you can hire a photographer if you want, but if you want true success and you want an artist and you want people that are going to create an amazing experience, an amazing portfolio, you hire the Mamones. And it was that simple, was to take ourselves from being one of many, right? You're a photographer in a sea of photographers. There's only one the Mamones. And so we rebranded in 2012 because we were each operating our own studios, which didn't make any sense any longer. We were married and we were in it to win it together. So we rebranded in 2012 with the expressed idea that we weren't photographers. That's why it's not the Mamones Photography. It's the Mamones LLC. And we were able to achieve, I believe, a uniqueness that made it so we were our only competition and we only had to sell against ourselves and our brand promise and the wants and needs of a client, which just makes it so much easier.
So I love that. I mean, I absolutely love the branding of what makes you unique in the sea of photographers. So, I mean, what a great just nugget of wonderfulness that is right there. Who supported you through this? Like, not, I don't mean financially, I don't, but I mean, did you hire coaches? Did you find a community? Was it just you and Emily? What did you draw on during those early years of, every day isn't easy and we don't know where our next client's coming from. And what I know about you, because we've talked about some of the people that you've had the pleasure of, photographing, or I should say, what would be the word other than photographing?
Well, we try to tell people that we're sort of their creative partner.
Okay, so the creative partners in that, and you've done that for some high profile people. Was there any organization or group or people or friends or coaches or mentors or is it just you and Emily against the world?
Well, I think largely it was Emily and I against the world. I find a great deal of comfort in knowing that Emily and I can both be together as a couple and share our lives together, but also have built a business. And I have a lot of people that ask me, how do you possibly do that? How are you married, work together, live together, our parents together? And first of all, she's just an amazing person. I married up in every way. And the other thing is we really are complements of each other. We have our own strength buckets. We stay in those strength buckets. And so we complement rather than compete with each other. So that's the first thing. I'm a little embarrassed to say, especially now that I'm in the coaching info space, helping people be a catalyst, right? It's that achieve your goals faster and with less work. I never thought of that. I was grinding it out the hard way. I fought through and said, okay, I'm just going to make this work. And if I don't believe in regrets, but if I could go back and tell entrepreneurial me in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, hey, dude, it doesn't have to be this hard. Take X number of thousands of dollars or whatever the case may be and invest in somebody to help you. That's the first thing I would do. But it wasn't just Emily and I. I'm a relationship marketer. And so I got invested and involved in associations. Dallas-Fort Worth has a chapter of the National Association for Catering and Events. I just celebrated them yesterday in a marketing campaign that I'm working on, Thankful for People First. And that group of people fundamentally supported us both fiscally by sending referrals our way, by hiring us for their own projects. So we had a lot of hotels and caterers that would hire us for lifestyle photos or food and beverage photos for menus and social media. But ultimately, those people have gone on to be partners in life, celebrating successes together in the current pandemic, sort of crying on each other's shoulders. There is no industry that's been hit harder and is easier overlooked than the hospitality and events industry. And so my heart struggles with all of them, and that's been a great support. So we didn't do it alone. I maybe wasn't as strategic as I should have been about getting help from someone, but we did have a community because, again, as a loud and proud relationship marketer, there's no way we were going to not like form and nurture considerable bonds with people around us.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So you've got this profitable business, it's going gangbusters, and then, March of 2020 happens, and that all gets put on the sidelines. Mm-hmm. And I know you resurrected some things that you had wanted to do. So talk about that journey, because that led us to, if you had just gone on your way as a photographer, I probably never would have met you.
That's probably true.
So talk about what you've done, what you've experienced since March, and some of the directions that you're moving into. So
Emily and I just don't rest comfortably in not being able to contribute. So we are driven. So the people first, then profit principle and rallying cry, just to offer a little context around it, started when I was in hospitality. It was basically a causal relationship that I noticed and always have appreciated. It's not correlative. It's not that they go side by side. It's fundamentally that if you put people first, profit will follow. The further context is profit doesn't mean money. I'm not talking in this situation about the fiscal definition of profit. I'm talking about what is it in your life? And money should certainly be one of them, because if you're not making money, you're not able to exist. But what else is it in your life that brings forth profit? So as I started to want to share this message, and I so humbly had people reaching out to me saying, how did you and Emily do this? You know, our business sort of became a proof of concept that people liked the idea of. We didn't run ads, Janet. We didn't, have to feel like we had to get a message out in a statistical or financial way. Our leads were largely inbound from preferred partners that we had invested in. And so it became this proof of concept. People were saying, how are you doing this? How can you help us with this? And so I just started answering those questions. And in March of 2019, I first tried it 6 months before my daughter was born. And when I found out we were pregnant, I thought, okay, time to slow your roll, Dawn. It's time to be dad, rather than embarking upon this sort of side hustle to my side hustle. And I did it again in March of 2019. My daughter was 3 and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I wasn't crystal clear on my message. I wasn't crystal clear on my mission. And so I had a lot of people following me, an unbelievable amount of support, and it just sort of fizzled and didn't quite traction. And I had to continue to run the photography business. And so what really ended up happening was March of 2020, to make a long story long, was I got sidelined by no fault, quote unquote, of our own. And in order to continue to find profit, not the monetary profit, because trust me, I'm an unpaid intern for my business right now. In order to find profit, I wanted to contribute to other people's lives. So I started a YouTube channel sharing some things about our business that I believed were the reasons why we were successful. I started to repurpose that content on a podcast because I thought I want to meet people where they're at. And if they don't want to watch YouTube, they can listen to me on a podcast. And then our good friend Doug Sandler with Turnkey Podcast came along and said, Don, I think you're doing a great job, but I think you should put more effort into the podcast and use it as its own content format. And we took his course together, you and I, and we got to know each other. And really what it boiled down to is I was able to create content, send it to people in a way that was easy for them to consume. They started to listen. They started to put it into place. It started to work. And then they started reaching out and saying, I want to have a coaching call with you, or, hey, do you have any group coaching programs I can get involved in, because this has been so valuable. So I'm humbled to say that the proof of concept has turned into sort of a new brand that's starting to develop.
Yeah, it's funny because I know when I first met you, being the coach that I am, and you can't take the coach out of the girl, I was like, so what do you sell? Because that's the first question I ask anybody. Like, that to me, the products that you sell define the business that you have. So, sure. And you're like, I don't sell anything. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean? Like, I was just like, how do you do that? So, so
that brings me back, if you don't mind, just a quick anecdote. So earlier when I said that when I was in hospitality, I was the group sales servicing arm. I basically, all of my key performance indicators, I think you and I might have touched on this, were not sales in any way. Maybe upsells, maybe they needed a different wine to pair with that meal. But fundamentally, by the time the file got to my desk, it was sold. It was worth $1 million to the hotel, let's say. And it was our responsibility to execute the event, to do it well, to make sure that that client was satisfied and we exceeded their expectations, and that they were basically either a return guest or a referral source. None of it had to do with sales, Janet. So when I started my photography business, it was the same. It was just easier to put a mark on what I sold, right? If somebody said, what do you sell? At first it was photography. And then it became, I sell an experience. And then it was that I became a creative partner that sells an exceptional experience, a legacy creator, a storyteller, like all these things. And when you and I met, I just wasn't sure what we were selling yet. And so my key performance indicator was, what am I offering to the audience, right? I see the people around me as an audience.
Well, and what I love about what you did, and not that there's anything wrong with that answer to that question, although it pains me, but I'd rather you say nothing yet, or I don't know, than you go out and you create something to sell and you haven't figured out what people want to buy. And so in my opinion, you did it the right way, is you went out there and you created relationships with people that had a problem, and you created your coaching programs and whatever you're selling in response to the problem, not doing it in a vacuum and then hoping that people buy it. Because I see a lot of people do that, and then they go out and they can't figure out why no one's buying anything because they don't want what they have. So good on you with that.
Well, that didn't come by accident, and I won't say that I'll take a ton of credit for it because, again, when I was offering a service and was able to evolve, I guess maybe it was a little more just intuitive for whatever reason. When I started this process, I will say that the depth and breadth of what I've learned from people that I've been so fortunate to either have met through our photography company or through the podcast or wherever else, the depth and breadth of it, Janet, it's overwhelming. And I'm so appreciative to all of those people because I can tell you there's no chance I am where I am right now as far as knowing what my mission and message are and the direction of this brand without all those people. So right. I'm very fortunate.
So people first, then profit. What's next for that?
So the podcast has been a real focus. It has allowed me to meet people and to distill commonalities amongst entrepreneurs and business owners that would have taken a much longer time. One of the things that I've learned very quickly by spending time with folks is that part of being an entrepreneur is in perfect alignment with people first then profit. Now, I always assumed and thought that was the case, but it has been a proof of concept that has been lightning fast. So many of the entrepreneurs that we've had the pleasure of chatting with left well-paying, comfortable jobs with benefits and all kinds of security because they weren't fulfilled. And part of, we've had this conversation. Part of that means that this concept of people first then profit, definitively profit then in that situation meant they were unfulfilled in some way other than money. And so that is pushing me down the path of helping people that are making that transition, especially potentially out of a corporate job or have been out of that corporate job for a period and have remained stale, can't seem to get to that next level. It's largely just because they have not distilled down, haven't dug deep enough to truly figure out how do I serve my ideal client and how do I prove to them that I'm the person that, to your point, can solve their problem or get them to the next level of success for their profit.
So I just want to give a big shout out to you and your podcast. We met through Doug Sandler and Turnkey Podcasting. And for me, I was at a stage where my podcast was 8 months old when I met you guys. I was 35 episodes in. I had listeners and all of that, but I just didn't know what to do next. Mm-hmm. And I bring that up because one of the reasons that I picked Doug's Turnkey podcast, and I had an inkling then, but it's now why I'm still involved with them, is he has created such a great community of podcasters. Mm-hmm. I mean, I met you, one of the first ones that I met, and I'm like, yeah, we're going to be buddies for life. Like, we're going to go through this journey together. And it just, to me, reiterates to everybody, whatever your passion is, whether it's podcasting or whatever, having a community of people that can help you and guide you, and all of that is just so critical.
And I think it's important to note, specifically right now, but even just more largely sort of in the digital age, that's increasingly difficult. And it oftentimes takes dedication and more effort than it may have in the past. So as an example, as digital interaction and social media increases, I've sort of noticed that transactional nature of interaction has increased, and it takes more forethought, a little bit more work to sort of establish and nurture bonds like the ones that you and I did. And now that came from a community of people that were aligned in some effort, interacting weekly on a call, through instruction, in a Facebook group. So again, you're leveraging social media, but I think that there's just, unfortunately, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners out there that are posting stuff into the ether, which is a very smart thing to do, and you need to do it, reacting to stuff in the ether in a somewhat transactional way, but they're stopping short of interacting more meaningfully.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I don't have the same connection with every person who's in the Next Level Podcasting group.
Sure.
And so I think you're absolutely right. It's not enough to just show up you got to show up and interact and be that with people. So I think that's really, really important. So, how would you categorize, how would you say this whole pandemic has affected you? And I suspect, how has it affected you? Like, I just want, like, has it been the best thing that ever happened to you? Like, can you put some thoughts around, I know a lot of people, because I've coached a lot of people who are in the situation where in March, everything stopped, right? And you're right, the hospitality industry has been particularly hit by that. And there's a lot of people who are still sitting around, but I want your perspective on how you turn that lemon into a lemonade. Like, I want your unique perspective on how you resurrected something you had put on the shelf and now you're running with it. And when photography comes back, yeah, that'll be a part of your life, but it won't be like you drop what you're doing. So I wanted your unique perspective because I know it's inspiring.
Well, thank you for that. It's a great question, Janet. And to my point earlier that there's no one impact or one reason, I think one of the first things is it reaffirmed how much I loved what I did. So it's that old adage of you have to watch what you wish for. In January and February, Emily and I, it's one of our busiest times of the year, is in the first quarter after having met a certain group of clients. The digital entrepreneurial space, it seemed like most of the events were happening January, February, March. And so there was a time in January where we had gone on a 8-day cruise with a client to photograph his high ticket clients. Then we went to a huge 5,000 person event for him. And then we came home and had a couple of small jobs. And then we flew out for another one. And there was a point at which I looked at Emily, I'm like, man, is there just a day when we don't have to have our camera be running and gunning, editing photos, like blah. And then literally less than a month later, all of our jobs were cleared from the calendar and our lives changed like so many others. It reaffirmed how much we loved our life and loved what we did. So there was both the bitter pill of loving what we did and sort of having it taken away. So it was good and bad. I would say that the other takeaway that was, it's hard to think of anything positive coming out of it, but let's go ahead and do that for a minute. There's no way I could have dedicated the amount of time and energy into this pursuit and still run the photography company. And so I decided, I put my foot down, and Emily and I sat down and we tried to work out as best a schedule and figure out how we could support one another and care for one another. At the same time, say, okay, we're going to remain relevant. We're going to keep the brand operating. We're waiting in the wings for these clients to come back. And then I'm going to put 110% effort towards whatever this next thing is. So I've probably traversed way more land than I could have ever conceived of, having still operated the photography business. And to your point, my genuine hopes are that when things open back up, which they will, because they always do, and live events get going again, because they always will, for that energy and that interaction and that excitement, we will continue to serve our clients loyally, especially the ones that have been with us for so long. And I will continue this to a way where we'll just have 2 freight trains on the track running at the same time. And I think the best thing about that is it allows us to curate a client list of our highest value clients and our most loyal clients for the photography. And then I will continue to serve entrepreneurs and business owners in a way to help them achieve the same amount of success that we've been so fortunate to achieve. And so, I mean, it's like putting your hands together to applaud, right? If those 2 things can come together, I will celebrate all day long. And the time will tell.
Yeah, you have to stay the course, I think. I just think that, yeah, well, you know, I mean, I'm a coach and my life is dedicated to serving people. And and I just think that's my mission and that's my responsibility. And not that you don't serve people through photography, you absolutely do, but it's a different level and you're really, really good at it. And it'd be a shame if things come back and you didn't continue to pursue helping entrepreneurs the way you're doing that. So I know that you interact with a lot of people in the service industry because I know you have a weekly call that is mostly attended by people that are in the service and hospitality industry. What would you say to them? And what do you say to them every Monday at 8 a.m. my time, 10 a.m. your time? What do you say to inspire them? And what are you hearing from them as far as how they're dealing with it and how they're looking at the future?
Well, thank you for all your kind words. That call started 8 months ago when this whole crazy pandemic hit, and it was out of an abundance of want to ensure that people didn't just silently fall away. A lot of the people in the hospitality industry have been laid off or furloughed. A lot of people whose businesses have kind of been decimated by this are either solopreneurs or small teams, and those teams have been furloughed, and so they're still by themselves. And I didn't want that to be the case. I'll say straight out before I even get into that it has given to me as much as I hope that I've given back to them, because it's my favorite way to start the week. Largely, I'll say at the very beginning, it was just supporting one another, commiserating with one another. There were tears shed about the fear, the anxiety, the depression. We had a couple of opportunities where we talked about self-care and ways in which you can try to impact change on the things you can control. So that was sort of phase one. Phase two was about what's next and identifying that it is so hard to be in a situation where you don't know whether it's good or bad. You just don't know. The inability to know the future is one of the hardest things, I think, for the human mind to grapple with. It's like, hey, if it's going to do this or do that, let me just deal. But this whole who knows was very difficult. So we did a lot of that. What's next and what ifs. And I'm so encouraged because just recently we've sort of entered the new phase of everybody recognizing that we still don't know when it's going to end. We don't know what the result's going to be, but they've been focusing on more productive things. And we've been trying to, one of the things I say about self-care and keeping up is if you're no good to yourself, you're absolutely no good to anybody else. So we've been talking about that a lot. And then you have to leverage the time we've been gifted. And it's hard to look at it that way. But the fact of the matter is much like my circumstance where I said, okay, I could have never covered this ground and operated a photography studio. So I'm just trying to make do and make good on all the time I've been gifted. There's been a lot of that. And so from that Monday morning call where everybody's welcome and we just chat, I have a group of 10 people that have gone into a group coaching program that's a beta that we're just going to see how it goes for them. Not because the content, in my opinion, and through our proof of concept isn't viable and isn't exceptional. It's that, are they ready for it? Can they take advantage of it right now? And I think the struggle is people are like, well, there's no business out there. So I'll just kind of be in a holding pattern. But there's so much progress they can make.
Yeah.
So that when everything opens back up, they're not at a standstill. They're at a light jog and can just absolutely take off. So there's just so much. So much has been lost and so much has been gained.
Yeah, I commend you for taking the bull by the horns when, like, okay, my business is shut down. I've got this thing that I've really wanted to do. I want to really run with it and take advantage of the time that I have. I will tell you that I have clients that have put me on hold and are sitting in their basement in the dark, or I don't know what they're doing, but they're waiting. And I think when this started, I think we thought, oh, it's going to be a couple of months and then, it's going to be over. Clearly that's not the case, but the clients, so I've got a couple of those. More and more I have clients that are more like you who are saying, how do I use this time to shift my business? Like, I'll give you a great example of Kenny Ballantyne, who's been on this podcast a couple of times. He's a videographer. And I was actually in his video class. It was called Content Club, and every month we would go to his studio, and he'd teach us the ins and outs of video, and they would do a video shoot with all the cameras and they'd edit it, and he was making money with Content Club. Then all of a sudden it hit, and he's like, well, no one can come to my studio. And I said, well, there's no reason why you can't continue to do that. They set up their own cameras in their offices, and then they still video. You coach them on what to do and the lighting and the this and the that and all of that. And more importantly for me, as I was starting to do that, just getting me to do video. I mean, it's not even the fact that you have to have perfect lighting and all. It just get me in the habit of doing it. So he kind of changed his direction, and now he's serving clients all over the country. And guess what? When things open up a little bit, he may go back to doing Content Club where you go to his studio and you do that, but he has opened up a whole component of his business that he would have never done if this hadn't happened. And I think in all of us, well, I know that there's pieces of my business that I have explored that I would have never explored had this not happened. So while it's been very difficult, you got to look for the silver lining, and you've done an excellent job of that. So I really love that about you.
Well, thank you. And it does come back to the old adage. I'm old now, and so this book was something I read, I want to say, in my 20s. So it's been around for a very long time, but it's been the who moved my cheese lifetime now, right? You can sit around and wonder who moved your cheese, and you can just struggle and suffer with the fact that your cheese isn't where it used to be, or you can become the industrious little mouse that says, well, somebody moved my cheese. I'm either going to find other cheese, or I'm going to find a path to my cheese, or whatever the case may be. And so I commend you as well, because you and I connected early, we connected often, and I think that we found a lot of symbiosis between us, and that served us well. So thanks for being a relationship marketer at heart.
Well, and you know what? I'm sure we're going to do some business together. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but it's been one of the most interesting things for me going through this, and a lot of other things that we've gone through, is I looked at my business as I sell this and this. I sell group coaching, and I sell, private coaching. And that's how I'm going to build my business. That's how I build my business. And now my mind has been opened up through a number of other things that we've done I'm growing my business through collaboration. I'm growing my business through partnership. And that wasn't something that I had thought about or pursued, and that's showing up for me. And so I think it's just opening your mind. So it's been so awesome. Any last words that you have? Any other brilliant thoughts that you have for us?
Well, I don't know about brilliant, but thanks for setting the bar high. I would say that one of the things that I find in the entrepreneurial space, and as a business owner, and truly as a human being, this started in photography for me, Janet. I did a lot of corporate portraits for people, both high ticket for high level CEOs and business owners, and also high volume for a company that wanted to order, just a nice headshot for all their team members to put on LinkedIn or whatever. The same is true of almost everybody. They were the most critical of themselves, and they gave the most grace and kindness to people around them. So I would have 2 or 3 people, they would all do a headshot. They would look at the photos together, and the person would say, oh, I look blah, or I look this, or I look that. And it was always sort of self-deprecating and sort of not necessarily derogatory, but they weren't giving themselves the same kindness and grace they would give other people, right? Mm-hmm. They would say the nice things, and almost everybody shared in that. I find it true as part of the human condition that we're always hardest on ourselves and always give the most kindness and grace to someone else. And here's the deal. That's great right up to a point. And the point at which it's no longer great is when it becomes destructive instead of constructive. So for those of you that are out there that somehow have subscribed to a myth that this should have happened faster, that you should be doing better, that you should be doing something that's somehow changing the world, just remember that you have to crawl, then you can walk, then you can run, then you can fly, and give yourself the grace that you would give someone else. Certainly be critical, certainly evaluate so that you can get better. Make sure it's constructive and not destructive, because entrepreneurship is a wild, crazy, difficult ride. And if you don't give yourself the grace, then you're basically just gonna sort of soul crush your dreams and not get there. So that's one of the things I like to tell my clients.
Well, that's great. We're going to leave it there because that's a great place to leave it. I really, really appreciate having you on, Don. You are awesome.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right, Breakaway entrepreneurs. I just want to remind you that success starts with your mindset. However, it is massive action that gets you there. And Don, you are the massive action guy. Thanks again for being here. Ben, you're going to take us out.
Thank you for listening to the Breakaway Entrepreneur Podcast. If you like the show, please rate, recommend, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts so we can share more actionable insights with the entrepreneur community. Until next time, challenge your mindset, be bold, take action, and financial freedom will follow. You can get helpful resources and templates to guide and inspire you from Janet's free Breakaway Entrepreneur Toolkit. Get it now by going to www.breakawaybusinesscoaching.com/toolkit.